This show is brought to you by thegamecubewascool.com. To find download links to our episodes, follow us on social media, or shop in our store, it's all there. Created by Mike Laine Studios.
The GameCube Was Cool, hosted by Mike Laine and Neil Gilbert.
Oh, Mike, it's been so long since I talked to you.
So long. Just years.
I can't believe it's been a week already since we recorded episode 30.
It's been a week since we recorded episode 30. That's how our recording schedule works. Every week. Come on, Neil.
Every week we record, totally not 10 seconds apart from one episode to the next or anything, right?
Totally not. Totally not.
Totally not. Well, like we said, this is going to be a little bit of a different episode. We're not talking about no GameCube games today, other than GameCube games that we already basically talked about. This is going to be episode 30.5, Side Mission Part 2. Obviously, we did a Side Mission Part 1 earlier this year. If you haven't listened to it, it's episode 13.5. We talked about games on the road. This week, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things from 2020. But before we get into that, Mike, we had a little bit of a stats game we wanted to play to start off this episode. You mentioned that we have our list of top 5 downloaded episodes from the first 60 days of being live, correct?
That's right. That's kind of a confusing statement, so I'm sure people are like, what did he just say?
It's not fun unless you know stats.
Exactly. Basically, we're just interested to see what episodes do best in their first 2 months, because that's a pretty fair way to judge how an episode is doing amongst all of you.
We did something like this on episode 25 just to see what the best downloaded episodes are of all time. This one is just broken down into 60 days only. So
that's right.
Very different.
So, Neil, why don't you give us your first guess? And so we'll do the same thing. You get a point, right, if you get it in the correct order, and you get 0.5 for the game.
Okay, let me get a sheet of paper out here just so I can... All right, so for the 5th most popular episode, I'm going to say episode 13, Star Fox Adventures, Eternal Darkness, and Cubivore.
That is number 7. Weird story, Neil.
0 points. Okay, fine. I'm going to say for the 4th episode, episode 10, the Dreamcast.
I'm sorry, Neil. That is number 11.
Wow. Okay, I'm terrible at this. All right, so for number 3, I'm going to have episode 2, Luigi's Mansion.
I'm sorry.
Oh my God, I'm going to get no points today.
Luigi's Mansion is number 12.
Wow, okay, I'm not even close. Number 2, episode 15, Sunshine.
Ding, 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 ding. Super Mario Sunshine is on this list, but it is at not number 2.
Okay, so I have a half a point. That's great. Let's see if I can get number 1.
Neil doesn't know his own podcast.
I'm not even confident at number 1 now. I'm going to say it's the launch day episode. No,
I'm sorry. That doesn't even make the top 10 because the first 60 days of our launch, there weren't as many people listening to us.
That's true. I didn't take that into account. Okay.
Yes.
So, Mike, why don't you give me the real list of our top 5 downloaded games in the first 60 days of being live?
Our top 5 most downloaded games in the first 60 days are number 1, Super Mario Sunshine. Number 2, Animal Crossing. Number 3, Melee. Number 4, Crash Bandicoot. And number 5, Tony Hawk.
Nice. Okay, so what's the oldest game on that list? Is that Melee?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
At number 3.
That's a good smattering of games. I'm happy to see Crash Bandicoot on that list, actually, and Tony Hawk.
I was surprised that Crash Bandicoot got to make it that high, but honestly, I think it's because we did a really good episode for Crash Bandicoot. That was one of my favorites, and that's also a good lead-in, Neil, because let's recap the year that was.
Okay, let's do it. But first, I'm going to go through our housekeeping speech. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 30.5, Side Mission Part 2 of the GameCube Was Cool Podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcast services. If you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe to us on whatever service you use so you don't miss an episode. We are the #1 GameCube podcast on the internet. We're here to look back on all 555 North American GameCube games, 1 by 1, sometimes 12 by 12. Visit thegamecubewascool.com where you will find our social media channels, episodes available to download, and you can leave us reviews. You can also explore our lovely store. Christmas is right around the corner, and we think your grandma's bathroom would look great with our bathroom mat. The website was developed by our very own Mike Laine.
That's me.
That's you. Last week, we talked about the Polar Express and a bunch of Christmas video games that we uncovered in our 27 years of life. Check it out if you haven't already. This week is part 1 of 3 of our little holiday side mission saga. Mike and I are taking a few weeks off to just enjoy the holidays with our friends and family. So we'll be back on January 7th with our regular content. But today, Mike, let's talk about the GameCube Was Cool podcast highlights of 2020 to start off.
Let's do it. So to start off, for real, Neil, we will be doing a little speed run of the year that was. Episode 1 was our launch day. We talked about games like Wave Race, Blue Storm, Batman Vengeance, and Super Monkey Ball. It was our first episode, Neil. It was pretty cool. We did it.
It was pretty cool. It was also very rough when you go back and listen to it now. But then we had episode 2, which was Luigi's Mansion, where we had our friend of the show, Zaffer, join us for the very first time. And I also made a bunch of references to Scooby-Doo.
Episode 3 was the soccer episode, one of my personal favorites. We had friend of the show, Marty Thompson, on to talk about the Gizmondo, which is one of the best things I've ever found in my life.
Nice. And then we went on to episode 4, which was Shameless Clones. I don't remember any games from that episode. Oh, Vex. We talked about Vex on that episode.
We talked about Vex on that.
That's the only game I remember. All right.
It's okay because episode 5, we talked about a AAA game, Pikmin, one of Neil's favorites. And we had Ramon join us to talk about blue Pikmin memes.
Yes, blue Pikmin memes were fun. But then episode 6, we talked about extreme sports from 2001 to 2002. That's when we finally found the hidden gem BMX XXX.
Thank you, Victor and Gavin, for showing us that.
Yes.
Episode 7 was Super Smash Bros. Melee, the episode that everyone was waiting for. Of course, this episode you can go back to forever because it's Melee. And we had special big guests Dan Kerr and Nathaniel Rubin on talking about this wonderful gem for the GameCube.
We're just waiting for Nintendo to shut that episode down any day now. Episode 8, we had unplayable games from 2001 to 2002. I think we talked about Casper on that episode. Again, I don't remember anything we talked about there. Did we have any guests on for that episode? I feel bad.
I don't think we did.
Okay.
Episode 9, though, we did have guests. It was The Simpsons, Road Rage, and Hit and Run. We had John, Harrison, and Annika to talk about these crazy titles and just how Hit and Run has no business being a great game, but obviously it's a great game.
Then we moved on to episode 10 with Sonic and the Dreamcast, which was a very fun episode to do, just to do some research on a console that you and I both pretty much missed completely. We had Zaffer come back onto the show to talk about Sonic, but just a super cool console that was a lot of fun to summarize.
Episode 11, we talked about 20 different arcade sports games. We had Brian, Marty, Harrison. We even had a friend of the show, Braden Kerr, on to talk about NFL Street Volume 2, I believe, and a lot of Street hits, Blitz, all those Zeds, a lot of Midway.
All the hits, all the zits, all that good stuff. Episode 12, we talked about Pac-Man and Super Monkey Ball. That was a really fun episode to do because we got to talk about two franchises that mean a lot to most gamers, even though it's nobody's favorite franchise, but it was just a cool thing to cover. We're going to be talking about more Pac-Man later on, but yeah, that was a pretty enjoyable episode, I thought.
And then we moved on to Star Fox, Eternal Darkness, and Cubivore. What do they have in common? Well, they were all supposed to be for the N64. Had a great time talking with Jed about Star Fox Adventures, going into Eternal Darkness and realizing what a weird game Cubivore is.
All weird games. But then we had a little bit of a side mission, Mike, because you and I were at the cottage that week, so we talked about games on the road. That was a fun little cool project to do that's kind of leading us into something that we can do during the holidays and during Christmas breaks now, obviously. So yeah, that was a fun episode to do. Not specifically about the GameCube, but we also talked about gaming in hotels and with Game Boys and worm lights.
Speaking of on the road, we talked about Burnout and racing games in episode 14, where we took it to the road with Ali, who came on the show, and he knew a lot about racing games that we did not know anything about. But we talked about Burnout 2, which is always considered one of the best games for the console.
And then episode 15, we had one of our biggest episodes to date, which was Super Mario Sunshine. We had a whole bunch of people join into the call. I don't even want to say names because I'm going to miss people.
Yeah.
We had so many people. Mike, you did such a great job editing that episode to make it sound like a radio show, and we had voicemails from all of our friends join in to talk about their memories of the game. A few people trashing the game, which I appreciate when people trash video games. But yeah, definitely go back and check out the Super Mario Sunshine episode if you haven't already.
Episode 16, we talked about Tony Hawk games. Pro Skater, Underground, American Wasteland. There's nothing else to say. One of the best franchises ever. Jed and Stefan joined us to talk about them. Jed called us from the side of the road to make sure that he got his say on Tony Hawk.
Nice. Then episode 17, we had football games. Now that means not soccer games, American football games. So NFL, Super Bowl, and all that jazz. That was a fun episode. Who joined us then? Was that Harrison?
That was Harrison.
Harrison, all right.
Episode 18, we talked about Animal Crossing, another AAA game. Obviously, one of the best-known games ever, especially in 2020. And it was the 18-year anniversary. that we did the episode on. So that was pretty cool. We had Kira join us for that one.
I just realized episode 18 on the 18th anniversary of Animal Crossing. That was very good planning.
Ooh, I didn't even mean to do that.
Cool. Episode 19 was wrestling, where we talked about all the WWE or WWF, World Wildlife Foundation, of course. All those games on the GameCube, WrestleMania, and Day of Reckoning. Harrison joined the show to talk to us about Chris Benoit. That was a lot of fun.
Episode 20 was Crash Bandicoot games, where we had Andy and Jess join us and just talk about their backgrounds with Crash games that weren't for the GameCube, because those games for the GameCube were not good.
Not fun at all. But then we had episode 21 about two games that were on the GameCube, Time Splitters and Geist. Both very popular cult classics on the GameCube. Time Splitters now is like on our top list of games to look for. And Geist is just a weird game that hasn't aged super well, but has its fan base nonetheless.
Episode 22 was Crystal Chronicles and RPGs. Zaffer came on, and Jake too, to talk about Crystal Chronicles and just how infuriating that multiplayer is.
Gotta have those Game Boy Advance players, Mike. But then we went on to episode 23, where we started to get into some Halloween spooky games. We talked about Resident Evil 2, 3, not 4. We talked about Zero and Code Veronica, which was a lot of fun. We had the Game Punks join us.
Brian.
Who joined us?
Brian.
And Brian. Right. Yes, thank you. I was trying to remember who it was.
Episode 24 was Scooby-Doo games, continuing on the Halloween trend, and it was just in time for Halloween, a day or two before. Talked about Unmasked, Mystery Mayhem, Night of 100 Frights. These games are not great, but we just like to talk about Scooby-Doo in general.
I definitely do. I'm playing Night of 100 Frights right now. Then we talked about another AAA game, Metroid Prime, one of the best games on the console, one of the best games of the generation. Friend of the show, Curtis, joined us, which was a lot of fun. Go back and check out that episode. All you Metroid fans, put your money where your mouth is. Listen to the show, damn it.
Episode 26 was Spider-Man games. Of course, we had to talk about Spider-Man 2, but we talked about Ultimate Spider-Man as well, a game that I love and doesn't really get the credit that it deserves, I think.
No, it doesn't. But then we also had, we called it a AAA day, even though it's not technically a AAA game.
It is for us, Neil.
It is for us, damn it. 007 Nightfire, and we had a bunch of people join us. We had Jason, Matt, Jeff, and Nicola come on to talk to us about the game. Such a classic first-person shooter. Very special game to Mike and Neil.
Special game and our longest episode to date, so make sure to check that one out. One of our favorites. Episode 28 was Ribbit King and Other Strange Games. Another long episode because there is so much to talk about here, especially with Ribbit King, where John and Kara came on to talk about their memories with a game they thought no one had ever played before. But we also had Josh from Still Loading Podcast talk about a game that Neil will be buying any second now, Metal Arms Glitch in the System.
I can't wait to buy Metal Arms. I'm looking for that game. I can't wait for the retro video game stores to reopen again so I can do game hunting. But we also covered on episode 29 movie tie-ins from 2001 to 2002. We also had Dan, friend of the show, join in to talk about Free Smash and what's going on in the Melee community that week. None of those games that week I really want to pick up, so that was a bit of a dead zone, but a bunch of movies that I want to watch now, so that was fun.
And finally, episode 30 was the Polar Express and Other Christmas Games episode, where we talked about the Polar Express, the movie, the game, the book, and we talked about some of our favorite Christmas games like Arkham Origins and Home Alone. And that's it, Neil. That's our speed run.
Whew, that was a big highlight list there, Mike.
Whew, that was a lot of fun. I felt like I was doing like a little Rocky montage.
Training in the mountains, running up the steps, doing some push-ups. All right, so Mike, let's just go through the year a little bit and talk about maybe our highlights. Obviously, we've now done 32 weeks of this podcast. Our first episode was on May 12th, 2020. And going back just to see what we've done is just incredible to see that in 7 months we just passed 5,000 downloads, which is very exciting.
And actually, we're at about 7,000 downloads now that we're recording this episode. So pretty cool, Neil.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't think, honestly, when we decided that we were going to do this, I guess it was back in March or April now. I didn't think we were going to get more than 50 downloads a week or something. I didn't think it was going to get to be hundreds of people downloading it and getting comments and fan mail. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, it's so much fun.
We're even on all these podcast services that I wasn't expecting. I knew that we were going to be on Spotify and Apple and eventually YouTube. But, we've joined on to iHeartRadio and CastBox and Podbean and Google Podcasts. It's just a whole bunch of avenues that I didn't even know existed.
Same.
It's just a great way to get our name out there for more people to find us.
Yeah, no, it's been really exciting. It's been honestly a blessing to be able to do all this, and super grateful for all the fan mail we've gotten and just all the encouragement we've gotten. Just people being so nice and just saying how much they love listening, which is something I don't think I would have ever expected from anyone, even my friends, to say. And also just the fact that I personally have gotten a lot of messages from people saying how much we've grown in the past 30 episodes. You know, starting from the first episode, which you said earlier, was obviously a bit rough, and going to the last episode, Polar Express, it's been quite the journey.
Yeah, I mean, we found a way to make it easier to record. We set up a better schedule.
We know how to talk now.
We know how to talk a little bit better. We've cut out so many ums and likes. That's one of the things this year that off mic, you and I have talked about. Just, hey, you need to stop saying this, or you need to say this less, or say this more. And it's been a great way to improve public speaking. Even though we're not talking in front of people live, we are, we do know that people listen and people enjoy it, and they're listening to it at work. So we want to make sure that it's good content. There's not too many pauses or breaks, and it's not just, we're not repeating ourselves. So that's been a huge learning experience for me personally, and I know for you as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think now is a good time to talk about some of our highlights of the episodes. Obviously, we just said all 30 as fast as we could. But Neil, what are some of your favorite episodes and favorite moments from episodes this year?
My favorite episode to go back and listen to is Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah.
I just think that that's such a good production. Like it was staged like a radio show, and everything was edited together so beautifully. Mike, you did a great job. I tell you that all the time. I go back and listen to it from time to time just to listen to the jingles and everything. The mailbag, I love that part, and Toadsworth's eulogy. That's honestly one of my favorite moments, was reading Toadsworth's eulogy and then going into the mailbag. I thought that was just a really funny thing to do. We like to try to make this show a little bit entertaining as well, which I think we do a pretty good job of balancing entertainment with facts about the GameCube.
I think we do, and I think that was our best moment too, is with Sunshine. That was a lot of fun to record, and I've had a lot of people say that they had a lot of fun listening to that as well. I think some of my favorite episode moments for me was, I think, on the soccer episode. Just going back and listening to that, it's really funny.
Oh yeah, I haven't listened to that one in a long time.
Our interactions with Marty on that, especially Ronaldinho's, you're like, oh, I love his work. It's honestly like very funny to listen back to. I really like the Star Fox episode with Jed. I had a lot of fun doing that one. One of my favorite moments is when I left the room in the Hit and Run episode, and you, Harrison, and John were just talking about Lunchables in the 2000s, and the
did that make it into the final cut?
It did, yeah, and the ice cream, like the wooden stick that you would get that would break off.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's little things like that make this podcast great. How we're just talking about little things from the 2000s that we haven't thought about in almost 20 years. Then you just remember again, because someone says one thing and it just sparks a whole slew of memories that is just really fun to do. I completely forgot about that conversation. That's one of the things I need to do better at, is I keep forgetting the things that we discuss on the openings of these shows. Recording these episodes is fun, and sometimes like the episodes they all come out great in my opinion. Every time I listen to an episode, I always think, man, we did a really great job at this specific conversation or this specific game. We covered it really well, I think. Mm-hmm. The most fun episodes I had to record were probably the three most were Spider-Man, Tony Hawk, and actually I really enjoyed the BMX XXX, the Extreme Sports episode.
That was, I gotta say, I was so impressed with the amount of knowledge that Victor and Gavin brought to that episode, because like, not to downplay our guests, but oftentimes our guests will come on and we're really just looking for their memories. We're just here to have a casual conversation most of the time. Mm-hmm. If you have research, great, bring it. But if you don't, that's fine. We just want to get a conversation going, because that's what this episode, or that's what this podcast is about. It's about good conversations. Mm-hmm. But with the Extreme Sports episode, Victor and Gavin set the bar super high. They killed it with the stuff that they brought, because you and I, Neil, like, we know maybe the SXX games, but like, other than that, we've never played like any of these games.
No, the inline skating games and BMX games are a complete blind spot for me. So that's why we need to have guests on. Otherwise, we're just going to get us talking about how weird every game looks to us, because we're just outsiders looking in.
Victor bringing that clip from the guy outside the strip club for BMX XXX. That was so good. That was
so funny. Yeah, I would have had no idea that game existed if we didn't do this podcast. And that's been a really big highlight for me, is just uncovering all these new games, adding them to my list of games to buy, which is both good and bad, I suppose. But one of my highlights as well, outside of recording and listening to the show, is actually interacting with listeners on social media.
Yes.
Just finding out, I've said it before, but just finding out someone from another country or from another city or continent even is listening to us talk about, whatever, like Scooby-Doo or something, while they're driving to work or while they're working a night shift, is just something that I never thought would happen. And it's just such a cool accomplishment that you and I have both made this year, and I didn't think that this was going to be the way 2020 ended in the best way possible.
Yeah, no, honestly, I think this is. I hope that we brought joy to everyone in 2020 and made 2020 just a little more bearable.
Yeah, that's been like one of the goals for sure, is just to make it not suck too much, because it has. And I have to say one more thing before we move on to other things about 2020 that we liked. Can't move on without giving a shout out to all the other podcasters and creators that have given us shout outs on their shows, or let us on their shows, or come on our shows. There's been Game Punks, Slimecast, Gaming Memories. That was a lot of fun. Sensibly Cynical let me join his show a couple months ago. Still Loading Podcast. Josh from the Still Loading Podcast recently joined our show to talk about Metal Arms. So there's just all these creators out there that are doing just as much work, if not more work, than we are to put into their show. And it's really cool to see this little tight-knit community of almost like an indie band scene, like indie music. We're like the indie music of podcasting. How obviously there's the big guns, like there's IGN and Kinda Funny and Rooster Teeth out there that are just making millions of dollars or Joe Rogan doing their millions of dollars making podcasts. And then there's just this small, tight-knit community of podcasters that are making content that they love for just a few hundred people every week, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And yeah, special shout out to, you already said it, but special shout out to the Game Punks, who have been supporting us really since day one, and and are such nice people. Like, honestly, they are amazing, and they have a lot of love for a lot of these games, and it was so cool to have them on for Resident Evil. That was a lot of fun. Learning about the director who was deaf, or like the sound director or whatever, that was crazy.
Music composer. Yeah, that was funny. Again, just things that we would not have found on our own unless we really dug extra deep in magazines or old newspaper articles. But
yeah, thank you, Ryan and Ben, for all your support.
Yeah, and every time we post an episode, they always share it on their story as well, which has been great. But anyway, Mike, let's move over now to just other things outside of our podcast, if that now's a good time.
I think so. I think this is time for our 2020 recap. Let's just talk about, what did we like? What did we like? What did we hate? What would we rate it? I don't know.
Okay, sure. So I thought maybe we'd break it down into, let's talk about a few games, a few movies, a few shows, maybe some music, and then, yeah, I mean, giving the year a rating is kind of tough.
I know, I'm kidding.
So let's keep this with games that were only released in 2020, just to keep it simple. Since obviously you and I, we've done a lot of gaming of GameCube games this year. Those games were all released 18 years ago. So let's talk about games that were released in 2020. I'll start off. I have 3 games here if you want.
So do I.
Cool, perfect. So to start off the year, the first game I bought in 2020, I think, was on March 4th, 2020. It was Twin Breaker, which is a 2D brick breaking game. It's just an indie game on the PlayStation Store. I only played it for about a week, and I platinumed it. It's a very quick platinum. Developed by Lilymo Games and East Asia Soft. It was developed actually by a podcaster that I've listened to for the last 7 years approximately. Oh, cool. Colin Moriarty, who used to work for IGN. Now he's on his own. He's a huge PlayStation guy. Yeah, that's like all he covers is PlayStation, which I know is funny that's what I listen to. But I highly recommend, if you're a fan of just a 2D simple game, sort of like an NES brick breaking game or something you may have played on your dad's BlackBerry back in the day. Mike, you and I used to play
That's all games. When you said that, I was like, all I'm thinking of right now is Brick Breaker and the BlackBerry.
It's exactly that, but it's that with a story. They added a story to
it.
And there's boss fights, there's level, there's multiplayer. It takes brick breaking to the next level, to me at least. I never really played too many brick breaking games, and I was super addicted to it for a week.
Cool. What other games do you have there?
Sure. Yeah, the next game on my list here is The Last of Us Part 2.
Of course.
Was released on June 19th. PlayStation 4 exclusive, Naughty Dog game, obviously a follow-up to one of the biggest games of last generation on PlayStation 3. I know that this is a very divisive game, and it has its problems, and it has its there's obviously a huge controversy over if it's being too social justice-y and the writing being off and the development team being so staggered. But I thought it was a great game, an experience, story, writing, acting, Laura Bailey doing a great job as Abby. Even though Abby was very jacked in the game, I found that being very distracting. But the ending was just so powerful. Just the fight at the we're not gonna spoil it, but it was just so gritty and so just, I don't know. I'm always horrified of post-apocalyptic stories, and a lot of them just go too obscure and too obtuse, like something like I Am Legend. I never could see that happening. But something like The Last of Us, I can see mankind going down to that point if it gets very bad.
Yeah.
And then my last game on my list here for 2020 was Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remake for the PlayStation 4.
Of course.
Came out on September 4th, and it got me right back into skateboarding. Right around the same time that we released our Tony Hawk episode. And then a few weeks later, I was back on my skateboard, which I haven't done in 13 years or something, trying to do an ollie again. But the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 is just such a good remake for those original games. And I'd highly recommend anybody who liked the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games on PS1 or PS2 or GameCube should pick those games up as soon as possible.
Yeah, I have not played those games yet, but I'm dying to do so.
Nice. So those are my praise games for the year, Mike. What would your games be for 2020?
Well, of course, I had Last of Us Part 2 as well. I thought that was a terrific game. I remember someone asking me, it might have been you, what was your anger level after playing it or something like that? And I was like, well, my anger level is a 10, but not towards the game, towards the reviews.
Yeah.
Because you and I had problems with the game, but it wasn't the problems that everyone was talking about. So I was like, come on. But yeah, a lot of issues, but the great parts really outweighed everything. And I love The Godfather. It's my favorite movie. I love The Godfather Part 2. It's equally as good. And Last of Us 1 and 2 are very comparable to that. And also Godfather Part 2, like we talked about in one of our opening segments at some point in one of the episodes, Neil Druckmann, is that his name?
Yep.
His main inspiration was The Godfather Part 2 for Last of Us Part 2. Which when I read that at the end, I was like, I knew it.
You saw right through it. Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's what makes it so good, right? It's just like I'm not going to spoil anything. And my other games were Animal Crossing, of course.
Of course.
I put more games into Animal Crossing than anything else on my Switch, including Breath of the Wild, which was a pretty tough task because I think Breath of the Wild had 190 hours for me. So
how many hours are you at now with Animal Crossing?
220, I think. I haven't played for a while, but and then our
That's
friend
actually low.
Yeah, I know. Our friend Brennan has about 800. So
that's insane.
It's an easy game to spend time on, and it's so much fun. So many updates, so much work, so much love went into that game. Mm-hmm. It is really it's the true successor to the GameCube title, as we said many times in episode 18. Go check that one out. But yeah, Animal Crossing is up there for sure for game of the year, and it's just an unbelievable game.
Cool.
And Fall Guys is my third game, and Fall Guys is just such a cool indie game that came out and took the world by storm, kind of, just like a Fortnite. I hate using that word, but it's just like a Fortnite mini games almost, right? Because it's battle royale style, and you're just these beans falling over each other. And I know it's one player, so it doesn't have that multiplayer aspect when you're in for couch co-op. But I gotta say, it is so much fun being in a room with someone playing that game, because it's just so ridiculous to watch.
Yeah.
And honestly, so much fun. And for just a small game that came out and they got a wave of popularity, gotta always give some shout out to indie games. So yeah, Fall Guys, just a hilarious, awesome game.
Yeah, Fall Guys is one of those games. I played it at your house earlier this year, and that's just one of those games that I love. That's, again, it's trapped in the indie sphere, but it ends up being huge.
Yeah.
It's the type of game that would have been big on GameCube, just because, it would have been a mode in a GameCube game where you play as 1,000 Pikmins running down a hill or something. But they've made an entire game about that, and they put it out for free on PlayStation, and everyone jumped on it. It's become an internet sensation because of that. And it's a really neat way that video games have jumped into the pop culture
mainstream
spotlight. Yeah, mainstream. Exactly. Cool.
Well, I think that's good for video games then. And let's quickly talk about some of these other mediums that we've experienced. No concerts this year, unfortunately, Neil.
Just one. We saw Pew 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 in early January.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's right.
Concert of the year was Pew 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 at the Horseshoe Tavern on January. That was your birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was my actual birthday.
So let's move on to movies then, Mike. Did you watch any new movies this year?
I did. I saw Tenet in theaters, and I couldn't understand anything anyone was saying.
Me too.
It was good.
It was good.
Yeah, I don't know what's with Christopher Nolan and sound design. But and then I watched a movie called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which was on Netflix. The title has nothing to do with the movie. So it's, I know. I was like, what? It's a surreal movie. I honestly don't know how to describe it. I honestly have no idea how I could describe the plot. It was okay. There was a lot of dialogue. There was a 30-minute scene of them driving in a snowstorm.
Ooh.
So that I was like, okay, I like boring movies, but this is a little too much for me.
It's too close to home being from Canada.
And then I just watched a movie that came to Netflix very recently, and it's called Mank. starring Gary Oldman and Amanda Seyfried.
Okay.
But I love Gary Oldman. I think he's fantastic. I know you love Gary Oldman as well.
Yep.
As he obviously is in two of our favorite franchises. And I think we both agree that Gary Oldman is the unsung hero of The Dark Knight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he plays like that's a tough character to play.
I mean, just to be Chief Gordon, just got to be hell.
and then also be Sirius Black.
Yeah,
Like
at the same time, that's right. And he was, of course, Winston Churchill in The Darkest Hour.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very good actor. I love Gary Oldman.
Yeah, and so he plays Mank, who's a screenwriter, and it's actually it's a movie about a movie. It's about making Citizen Kane, often considered one of the pinnacles of film, and it's from the 40s, so it's an old movie. And the way they did Mank was really, really good. It was very interesting. So I definitely recommend that. I'm sure it'll get some nominations, but that's probably my movie of the year. But I haven't seen many movies this year, to be honest.
Me neither. I didn't really know what to talk about with this topic, really. I saw Tenet as well, just like you. I thought the plot was really confusing. Visually, such a great trip.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan, all of his movies stack up really well next to each other. So I didn't have anything bad to say about it. I just feel like I wasn't smart enough to see it, or I need to see it 6 more times. That's the excuse that everybody makes when they don't understand a movie.
Yeah.
You just have to watch it a bunch of times, and eventually you'll get it. I also saw Onward, which was the Pixar movie.
Oh, I saw that too, actually.
Yeah, it came out on Disney Plus, straight to Disney Plus around Easter time. I saw that one right when it came out. I enjoyed it. I like Pixar films. I like Disney films. Just a nice little movie about brotherly love, just like Mike and Neil, on a quest.
Yeah, no, that was a decent movie. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good movie of 2020. I think it's just easy to forget this year what came out.
I
and
know.
What didn't. So it's it's just been a bit of a blur. So it's nice to just kind of have this highlight to see what we liked. I also saw it's 2019, but I saw 1917 this year.
Nice.
The war film.
Great movie.
Yeah, that was a late 2019 movie, so I'm going to count it as 2020.
Yeah.
It came out in I think Christmas Day last year, but yeah, I would absolutely 100% recommend if you're a fan of war films. It's up there with like Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
All one shot, which I love those movies.
That was an
brilliant.
amazing shot. When he's like running over the mines.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
just running through the no man's land basically.
And it was a cool little it was cool to see the who the general was, who he went to deliver it to. Won't spoil that, but
No
that
spoilers.
was a cool cameo.
That was it was a very neat movie. So I'd highly recommend those 3 films this year: Onward, Tenet, and 1917. All right, so yeah, there weren't too many movies this year. Hopefully next year there are more. Let's move into music, though, this year, Mike. This has been an interesting year for music because obviously there's been no concerts. So bands are kind of in this weird in-between of, do we release an album? Do we not? Do we try and, because obviously bands have to make their money by touring.
Yeah.
And nobody can do that. So there's been a lot of live streams and virtual concerts, but there have been a few random albums released here and there. So did you want me to go through my favorite albums of the year first? I have 3 here.
Go for it.
Cool. So to start off, this album came out before the pandemic started. My album of the year would be Spanish Love Songs.
Nice.
That's the name of the band. Horrible search engine optimization with that band name. We talk about that all the time. Their album is called Brave Faces Everyone. They're a band from Los Angeles, which Mike introduced me to in 2018, and I fell in love with them right away. Again, this is my album of the year. They're I would call them like a sad emo punk band.
Yeah.
I love their songs. They're all very depressing songs. So if you're into sad emo music, I'd highly recommend checking out that album. If you already like that genre, you probably know what I'm talking about. But if you don't, I'd recommend giving it a listen. My second favorite album would be actually by a band called Stand Atlantic. I don't know if that's a band people like to hate, but
I've never even heard of them.
Okay, cool. They're like a pop punk band from Sydney, Australia.
Okay, I'm sure Marty's gonna have something to say about this.
They're in that same vein of like Newfound Glory, Simple Plan, like just very pop punky. They have a female singer though, so that makes them kind of different. I'd love to see them live when I can eventually see their shows. I just got into them this year, so that's kind of why I enjoyed listening to them. I also had them on my running playlist for most of the year as well, so that helped boost up their stats for me. And then my last album on my list here is by an artist named Brian Fallon.
Yeah, he's the lead singer for Gaslight Anthem.
Exactly. Yeah, he put out a acoustic solo album this year called Local Honey.
Very cool.
Kind of like folk acoustic music. I've listened to it a bunch. It's nice, just chill music when you want to sit, play a video game, or just fall to sleep to. All the songs are very nice to listen to, and it's just a good change up after listening to some sad emo music and pop punk.
Nice.
So yeah, those are my 3 albums of 2020.
Cool. For me, I have a couple albums. There's a lot of good music that came out in 2020, at least for me. Probably my album of the year was Jeff Rosenstock's No Dream. Neil and I
Cool.
both love Jeff Rosenstock, originally from bottom of the music industry.
Mhm.
His albums are always great, and this one just really, really was good this year. And I just hit the right chord. I also really enjoyed Run the Jewels' album, Run the Jewels 4, which I thought was really good. I had listened to their first album, but never really the other two. And this one kind of was well done. Zach De La Rocha is on one of the tracks and kills it. Love
Cool.
anything Rage. And also was like very timely too when it came out. Phoebe Bridgers, who Neil and I also love, her album Punisher came out this year, and
right.
I thought it was a really good follow up to her first album, to her debut album. She did a great job on it, and yeah, really well done overall. And my last album that I have to talk about is a woman by the name of Emmy the Great. I guarantee no one knows who she is because I never find anything about her anywhere. She has been making music for quite a while now, and she just had a baby, I think, in like February or something, early in the year. Okay. And she posted online. She was like, "Yeah, so I have these tracks that I recorded like last year. I mean, like working on an album. I think I'm gonna just make this album, and I think this is gonna be my last album for a while."
Oh,
and
wow.
and when she said that actually made me like her so much more, because just the fact that she's like, you know what, I think this is good for now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have so much respect for someone who can do that.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I would rather you do that than attempt to just like churn out album after album, because her albums are very personal. They're never just throwing out filler tracks. They're always about something. Mm-hmm. And I think her mind was like, you know what, I got other stuff to do right now. Mm-hmm. Like I have this story I want to say, and I'm not going to say another story until I feel the time is right. So I got to give her credit on the album April.
Oh, nice. I need to check that out. I have not heard of that artist or album before, like you said.
Yeah, she's like a folk artist kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to put her, but yeah, she's it's a good. It feels like kind of an ending album, and it's a good one.
I'm always amazed at artists that have kids and more than one kid, and then they continue to tour and they continue to put out albums. Like
that's why I think she was like, "I'm good."
Yeah, right. Like I know that some artists they love their music, and I get that they like to record. And I know fans like to see their favorite musician perform in concert in their city. But whenever I see, like, the bands I listen to are all very small, and when I see that the lead singer or one of the members of the band has a kid, I kind of put in my brain like, okay, they shouldn't tour for the next few years. And when they don't, I'm a little bit happier at that because it means that the odds are that they're home with their kid, they're raising their kids, they're being a dad, and I like that, or a mom.
And that's exactly what I'm thinking with her too. Yeah,
kind of like Adele. Adele did the same thing too. Yeah, after her last album, which I respect that.
Exactly. Yeah, like I said, I respect that so much more. Just like it's okay to not make music every like you don't have to put something out constantly. No. You don't have to saturate yourself really.
You mean like how we put out a weekly podcast?
Exactly. And because I often find like I almost get bogged down when like an artist will keep putting stuff out all the time. It's like I get it. I see you're trying to like get as many streams of revenue for yourself. I understand. That's just my personal feeling.
I get it. I listen to one artist, Passenger. He's the folk acoustic guitar player from England. I love his music. I don't know if that's, again, I don't know what the popular opinion of him is, but he puts out an album every single year.
Yeah.
Like since 2009, I think he's had an album a year.
Yeah.
And impressive. And I listen to all of them, but it's just like, man, how are you doing that?
Because also the fact is like when an artist does have a break, it's, I don't know, for me, the next album is so much more impactful.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
It gives it a different meaning behind it because you know that person has done something, has gone through something, has like changed their life, like something has happened. So now when they write about something else, they have new material.
I know, Mike, I know that you're trying to reference that Simple Plan have not put out an album in 5 years, and that's what you're talking about, right?
That's what I'm talking about. That's it right there.
Very excited for the next album. It'll be 6 years since their last one, so that's a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good wrap up for music. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you want to talk about TV shows this year, but I don't watch any TV shows, so I have Seinfeld on TV shows of 2020. I
got 3 TV shows to talk about. I watched a mini series called The Undoing. It was very good. The ending was okay, but the rest of it was very good, starring Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman. There's The Boys, which I thought was really well done, and it's filmed in Toronto, and that was the only reason I watched it, but it turns out it's quite a good show. And then I watched Space Force, which was not a good show. That was terrible.
That's the Steve Carell show, right?
That's the Steve Carell show. That's his return to comedy, and it has an amazing cast, but fell very flat. So that was Netflix definitely interfering too much on that one. So we will see what happens for season 2, because they just announced that it is coming back.
I guess it did well enough. I'll just keep watching The Office on Netflix. I think that's what I'll do.
It's gone from Netflix next year.
Oh, God, I'm going to have to buy the DVDs. Okay, thanks for letting me know before they
welcome.
shoot up in price. Jeez. All right, so Mike, before we close out the episode, I just want to ask you, just if you could name 3 things that happened this year that were your favorite events. You don't have to go into it, maybe 3 things that you're glad, that stand out to you in 2020 that happened.
Okay.
Off the top of your head.
Well, number 1's got to be starting a podcast.
Nice.
Let's say it's probably the biggest event that
of all time.
Of all time. Number 2 has got to be starting my own business. That was kind of interesting so far.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of good learning experience, and I've had a lot of fun doing it and kind of being my own boss. And number 3 is getting a foster cat. We have a little foster cat here named Max, and who knows how long he'll be with us, but we love him very much, and he is definitely in the top 3 things that have happened in 2020.
He's got a great little social media presence there. I come and see him all the time. He has a white mustache, and I appreciate that. It looks like he's supporting Movember all year.
Yeah, he's got a perfectly symmetrical mustache, which is so strange.
It's very unattainable for the average man to get that, and just this cat has it,
I know, right? It's like he's gloating. It's like he's like rubbing it in your face.
Yeah, definitely. So my 3 things when I think of 2020, I'll start off with the same one you had, which was, starting a podcast. This has been such a cool experience, just from start to finish, to go from talking on Discord, hey, we should start a podcast, and then a few weeks before, buying microphones and setting up a schedule and a list of games that we're going to talk about each week, and setting ourselves up on Spotify and Instagram. Been just a really cool experience to watch it grow and to have this weekly passion project to work on every week with my best buddy. So yeah, that's a huge highlight of 2020. Also, before we started this podcast, Mike, you and I were planning on playing live music together more this year as opposed to podcasting.
I mean, one day we still will, but...
Definitely, but we actually did. We played 1 gig this year. We played on Valentine's Day, I think, or the day before Valentine's Day in Liberty Village in Toronto. And that was our first gig ever playing live, and that was a lot of fun. And I hope that we do get to play some more live music in the future, because it's such a great experience to perform live. This has been a great alternative this year to kind of put our voice out on the internet. It's kind of an alternative to playing live. We'll try and balance the two once bars and clubs reopen.
2029, baby.
2029. If not all the clubs are closed by then, one by one in the news, they keep closing.
Yeah, don't worry, Amazon will take over everything.
And then my other highlight of 2020 is I'm no longer single, which is a big deal for me.
There you go. That's a big deal. Yeah.
That's a very big deal for me. I've been single, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a nerd. I was single for 8 years. So met my girlfriend this year on a dating app, and we've been going out now for 4 months. I'm not going to pimp the app that we used unless they pay us. I'll work on that later. But anyway, it's been a lot of fun. We see each other like 2 or 3 times a week. She listens to the show, so she'll probably hear this. And so those are my 3 highlights of the year.
Those are awesome highlights, Neil.
Thank you, sir. So, Mike, this has been a fun recap of 2020, but next week we're still going to be off, no GameCube episodes, but why don't you let the listeners know what they can expect on episode 30.5, Side Mission Part 3 of the GameCube Was Cool podcast.
For sure. So Side Mission 3, we're going to be talking about just presents. Really, just getting games, consoles as presents, as gifts during the holiday season, obviously, is when we're putting this out, and it will be out Christmas Eve, which is when most people will be gearing up for the Christmas Day opening of some consoles, maybe some Xbox Ones, probably, hopefully not, but some PS5s, hopefully. That would be good.
If you get an Xbox One for Christmas this year.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it called Xbox One?
It's called the Xbox Series X.
Oh, yeah, because Xbox is really good at naming things. I forgot about that.
That's right.
They're almost as good as us.
Almost. Hopefully you receive a Switch, or maybe some people will receive GameCubes for Christmas this year, Mike. You never know.
I would love for someone to get a GameCube for Christmas.
If you receive a GameCube for Christmas this year, please let us know. We would love to hear about it.
It would be amazing. But yeah, stay tuned for that episode. And we hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and all the rest.
Yes, Mike. And also celebrate Festivus, too, on December 23rd. But until then, This was episode 30.5, part 2 of the GameCube Was Cool podcast, Side Missions. We have new episodes every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. We're the #1 GameCube podcast on the internet. We're here to look back on all 555 North American GameCube games, 1 by 1, sometimes 12 by 12. Check out our website, thegamecubewascool.com, to find out all of our new episodes, write us reviews, check out our social media pages, and our lovely store. Tell your friends, family, and Uber driver about us. Tell Stan, Neil says hi. Until then, we will see you next week.
Take care.
Bye.